I'll be speaking on the valley of death. The valley of death. And we're going to take our text from Psalm chapter 23 and verse 4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and the staff, they comfort me. Now, there are two things you will observe in the valley of death. One, in the valley of death, there is a shadow, a very strong shadow, and that shadow is called the shadow of death. Now, what do we mean when we say the shadow of death? The shadow of death are the experience of death, the pictures of death. For instance, somebody had an accident, a fatal, accident, and yet he almost died, but he did not die. Maybe he lost some of the part of his body. That experience for that person is the shadow of death experience. So the shadow of death is a reality in the valley of death. I'm going to explain the valley of death and why we should not go there. I'm also going to explain what can lead us to the valley of death. But firstly, I want to show us the content of the valley of death. One, the first content is the shadow of death. Somebody may get sick, terribly sick, that almost died, but suddenly maybe God intervened. Are you there? Now, that such a sickness is an example of a shadow of death. Now, the shadow of death is something that can lead to death. Anything that can lead to death is the shadow of death. Something that can lead you to death. Are you there? Some people went and commit abortion. They almost died of certain complications, but the Lord saved them. That experience you had is the shadow of death. Are you getting it? I have also had few experience on that line before, you know, seeing the shadow of death, but the Lord delivered me. But for a person that chooses to move into the valley of death, such a person will constantly meet with the shadow of death, meaning there will be a lot of experience around the person's life that is pointing to death. Only that the grace of God may now save such a person from each of those death experiences. Experience. Now, another thing you will see in the shadow of death, okay, another thing you will see in the valley of death, apart from the shadow of death, is evil. Evil. Now, evil is the atmosphere, is the general atmosphere in the valley of death. Once you find yourself in the valley of death, then expect evil. You cannot escape evil. The moment you find yourself in the valley of death, you cannot escape evil, because evil is just the general atmosphere. That's why you see certain people, the, the only thing that is real around their life is evil. The only thing that you can smell around them, you can perceive, you can discern around them is the shadow of death. Such people are in the valley of death. Now, what do we mean by the valley of death? The valley of death is that environment where the presence of God cannot be seen. Is that environment where God's presence is absent. Are you there? Anytime you journey away from the presence of God by the virtue of your disobedience to the instructions of God, I can assure you, you are heading for the valley of death. Uh, David also had this experience, he had some experience in the valley of death, and that was what he was trying to communicate to us in the book of Psalm, chapter 23, verse 4, where we read earlier. It is good for you as a child of God not to journey to the valley of death. One of the things that qualifies, as a matter of fact, the major thing that qualifies us for, the valley of death experience is disobedience. The moment as a child of God you choose to embrace disobedience, you will find yourself in the valley of death. Sometimes people have been obedient to God and they just think of it one day and say, "Oh, I've been obedient all this while, so let me just try disobedience at least for a while." The moment they now choose to disobey God, straight away they found themselves in the valley of death. Now, the consequence for disobeying God's instruction is that you will move into a place called the valley of death. I hope you understand. So, the best thing for every child of God that want to escape this experience is to ensure that their obedience to God is complete. I pray to God that you will never find yourself in the valley of death in the name of Jesus. Many people, as I speak, are living in the valley of death. They can't live a day without seeing evil. They can't live a day without hearing evil. They can't live a day without almost, having certain experience that can lead to their death. As a matter of fact, they are living with the fear of death. Such people are in the valley of death. How do you find yourself in this strange location? The truth is, one way or the other, you have disobeyed God. So, if you know you are not in an environment where the presence of God can be felt, what it means is that you are in the valley of death. So, you will need to go back to God and ask Him for His forgiveness. Tell Him to help you. Tell Him to give you grace for obedience. And by His mercy, I believe that the Lord will, change your location from uh, that terrible sight to a place where the presence of God can be felt. May you never journey into the valley of death in the name of Jesus. Please note that what qualifies a man for the valley of death experience is disobedience. May the Lord give you grace for obedience to God in the name of Jesus. This is the wisdom of God, said.